Sad to say, back when I was playing, mental, that whole thing was looked upon as being weak.
All right, welcome back to the highs and lows of X's and O's. It is a brand new year in 2025, and we are starting out with another excellent guest to just break down that mental game, the highs and lows of his experience, and then what he teaches his current athletes. So I am beyond excited to introduce you to Shaun Rutherford. Shaun is the CEO and founder of Tier 1 Quarterback. He attended both Blinn Junior College and Texas State University. While attending Blinn, Shaun won 2 conference championships and a national championship. After graduating from Blinn, Shaun attended Texas State University, where he helped earn their first FBS win ever with a huge upset over the University of Houston and earned Player of the Week and national recognition. Shaun still holds multiple records at Texas State. After graduation, he spent 3 years playing NFL Europe, where he won 3 titles and rewrote the record books for any organization he played for. After his stint in Europe, Shaun returned to the States to volunteer with his time at Texas State University to help groom and develop quarterbacks on the roster with his former offensive coordinator, Mike Schultz, and head coach, Dennis Francione.
Mhm.
All right. It was then where he mapped out his future with mentoring and developing quarterbacks to be better and to be their best. Shaun has worked with over 50 professional athletes and hundreds of college and high school athletes. He has also produced some of the top quarterbacks to come out of Central Texas over the last 8 years. So I am beyond excited, but welcome, Shaun. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So while I just gave you a general intro, and clearly we know you're kind of working one-on-one with these players, why don't you give our audience a little bit of background on what your current day-to-day kind of looks like?
Yeah. So I'm actually offensive coordinator at Maynard New Tech. Just finished my first semester. A fairly new school. We had a very young team. We did slide into the playoffs this year. Outside of doing that, as you mentioned, I'm also the CEO of my training business. And I also run a nonprofit tour. We have some of the top athletes that have come out of Austin and still currently in Austin doing that. So kind of staying busy doing all those things.
Wonderful. All right. So when we first start, I always kind of like to go what we call learning the play.
Mhm.
So take me back to you getting involved in sports from the jump. Like, how old were you? What did your sport youth career look like?
So probably ever since I could walk and pick up any type of ball, I just been super active. My mom, I was laughing the other day with my mom and my nephew on Christmas that they used to have to drag me in the house. Like I never would just willingly come in the house. They used to have to drag me in the house, but just always wanted to be outside. Always wanted to have fun outside and play.
Yeah. And were you multi-sport or was football always what you were interested in?
I actually hated football.
Huh.
So I played football, baseball, and basketball. Was on varsity, I believe, my sophomore year for football and baseball, or football and basketball, varsity as a freshman. Baseball was always my favorite sport, but as I got older and kind of started getting some looks and some offers, nothing was really full scholarship. So I told my parents they would never have to pay for me to go to school. So that's kind of how I got stuck with football. I saw that was full scholarships and didn't want my parents to have to pay for school.
And during your time, like, were there any influential coaches or teammates that you could think of that helped you kind of work through these sport experiences as a young athlete?
I had a bunch of dope coaches. I don't want to start naming one because there's a bunch of them that really influenced me. But I also had some ones that I didn't really like, and I think that's what helped me mold me to the coach that I am now. Just because some kind of just rubbed me the wrong way, and I saw how they did some other people. So that's kind of how I go about training kids now.
Yeah, talk to me a little bit about, like, we don't have to name names, but, like, what were the characteristics of your positive influence coaches? Was it you kinda were like, "I'm gonna take some of these nuggets, these ones really impacted me." What was that like?
Really just uplifting, always just being there, just knowing that if I picked up the phone at 1, 2 in the morning, like those guys are gonna be there. And just really taking the time, because being in it now, like coaches don't really make the money to match the hours that they put in. So just knowing now, like looking back, being like, dang, they really went out their way to do stuff like waiting 2 hours after school for kids' parents to pick them up, taking kids home, just putting in those extra hours. But again, really just had some dope coaches growing up.
Sure, yeah. And then, obviously, I'm gonna go to the flip side. What was the negative things that you were like, "I will not be that coach for my players?"
Just seeing coaches belittle athletes, like we all know in high school, there's some guys that are kind of learning and playing for the first time. So just belittling them, talking to them bad, and not really developing. And that's one thing. Like I'll always take the kid that needs to work. Like I've got some kids that come to me and already primed up, ready to go. But at the same time, I've had some that other coaches didn't want to work with because they needed a lot of work to get to them where they want to go. So just coaches that don't really want to mold the guys and build them up from the bottom to the top.
Yeah, why do you think we allow this to exist in sport? The coaches who can shame, embarrass, negative talk, like, why do we allow that?
It's funny. I really don't understand it. I think most coaches they do it, they were never really good at the sport that they played, or they didn't get the recognition that they thought they could have got. That's kind of what I feel like. The good coaches that I had, they excelled at their sport that they played, and then the other ones, you don't really hear much about them.
And as we know, it always comes back to the relationship. That's what matters. That's what's gonna push you, and that's clearly what you're about right now is building those relationships with your players. So, football wasn't the plan, but it became the plan because the other plan was, "I'm gonna go to college, and you guys don't have to worry about it." So, take me through, like, the process, how you ended up at Blinn and then to Texas State.
So I was actually really good in baseball. I had some looks to get drafted out of high school, but again, like it was kind of the thing of falling back to parents and maybe having to pay for school. So I actually double signed for football and baseball to Eastern New Mexico. And the coach from Blinn called me. He was like, "Hey," like he was recruiting me heavy for like the last 2 weeks before signing. He was like, "Hey, if you go there, it's gonna be the worst mistake you ever make. Don't do it." He was like, "If you come to Blinn, I promise you, you're never gonna regret it. You'll win a national championship, all that stuff." So literally signing day, I'm signing my paper, and my phone is like buzzing like crazy. And I like pull it out to peek, and it's the coach from Blinn, like called me probably 20 times.
Wow.
So I end up signing, sent the letter of intent over, and I'm like, "Well, coach, I signed. Like, I don't think it's no way to get out of this now." But because it was a Division two and I was going down to JUCO, I was able to get out of my letter of intent. But fast forward, ended up double signing to Blinn for football and baseball. And at the time, Blinn had a really good baseball team as well. But got to Blinn, my coach was like, "Yeah, you're not playing baseball. You're my quarterback. We're not gonna have time to do that. Come on." So get to Blinn, we end up winning a national championship. So that was really dope. Played with Cam. We'll probably end up getting into that, but just that's one of the players that I really kind of see how hard work goes and to kind of pour into your craft. But went to Blinn, we won the national championship. Actually had a cousin that was at Texas State, and just going there to visit him time to time. I really liked Texas State, and then my head coach from Blinn, his dad got the head coaching job at Texas State. So that's kind of how things kind of folded together. But when I got to Blinn, he was like, "If I leave here," he was like, "Promise, like you're coming with me. Like you're just that type of guy that I want to have in my program and have with me." So that's how that kind of fell to the Texas State.
So, let's lean into a little bit of, you think you're gonna play baseball too. We're not ready to retire from baseball.
Yep.
Talk to me about that conversation and the loss you experienced having that taken away.
Um, so everything was really good. And I knew I wasn't gonna play my first year at Blinn. I knew I was gonna redshirt. We had that conversation. They told me, so I'm like, cool. Like I'll just go to the diamond, I'll play baseball, and then spring I'll get ready for football again. My coach is like, "Oh no." He was like, "We got to get you primed and prepped for the next season. You're gonna be our starting quarterback, so forth and so on." So just kind of having that taken away from me, because again, I didn't like football. I just played football because I was good. Um, but when he told me that, it just kind of took all the breath away from me. But I mean, kind of looking back, how everything has kind of played out, I think I'm okay.
Yeah, it worked out for the vet, but it was hard. That were there difficult transitions going into the JUCO and the college system?
I think the biggest thing for me was a culture shock, just because I had never set the bench going through high school. Like I was always that guy. But getting to JUCO and seeing like there were other guys that were just as good as me and some better, like I was like, oh, like I've never really had to deal with this before. But the starting quarterback that we had, Terrence Kane, he ended up going from Blinn to Utah, but he ended up was just like a big brother to me. Like he dove into the playbook with me. Like he showed me how to be a quarterback. So just having him alongside me, that kind of helped build me up and gain confidence in the system and just want to be a better player.
Were there any routines that you had to kind of learn that were new, or just this adjustment period that you were like, "I'm gonna start taking this serious now"?
I got away with a lot in high school just because I was a good athlete. So I never really lifted weights. Um, I didn't wake up very early. Like whenever I worked out hard. But like some getting up 5 a.m. in the morning, 6 a.m. Like I never did that. So getting to college and having to do that, like being on the schedule, like boom, 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 be here, be there, do this that way. That was new to me. So having to kind of learn and get myself to fall into those things, that was a bit of a challenge. It didn't really take long because we had consequences for certain things. So I had to figure it out quick.
Yeah. What was maybe the worst punishment that you experienced that was a learning lesson for you?
So our coach used to make us do what was called a pirate. Um, it was our first workout of the spring. Me and my roommate, we both overslept. Like we didn't go out, we didn't do anything. We just both overslept. So our workout started at 6 a.m. We had mat drills. I wake up at like 7 o'clock. I wake up to a missed call from him. I'm calling him. I'm like, dude, we just missed workout. It's like, this not bad. And we were both leaders. So we had what we called leadership council. And we were both on a leadership council. And literally all other 8 guys were there besides us. So we got to afternoon workouts and we had to do a pirate. And the pirate is you have to go the width of the field, 50 yards. So you have to bear crawl 50 yards down and back, log roll 50 yards down and back. And then you have to do up downs every 5 yards down and back. And then you have to go practice. We started that before practice, and then you have to go practice. The worst thing ever. So trying to do that and then go practice wasn't fun.
Right. And, the accountability piece of, like, I just overslept, right?
Mhm.
Like, a lot of athletes, they all experience this, I think, at some point in
Mhm.
their first year.
Right.
Sometimes it's a little bit later, and you're like, "Well," but it generally is maybe like, "I just overslept."
Mhm.
And it's like, do you make up an excuse? Do you not? Like, was there any doubt that you're like, "I'm just gonna be honest," or did you run through options in your head?
No, I took that one on the chin. I called my position coach. I called my head coach. I was like, hey, I just overslept. Like, if I need to go back and do that workout by myself, like I'll do it. Like just to show you how committed I am. But they knew the type of guy I was. Like I was never late or didn't want to do stuff. So they kind of knew it, but I still had to do that part.
Sure, of course. And did that impact any of, like, your teammates' view on you of leadership, or did you have enough credibility already that it was okay?
I had enough credibility. That's always been one thing about me. Like even when I got to Texas State, like everybody just kind of molded around me like super quick. So just to get people to, I don't want to say follow, but for me to be a leader, it's like it's just a natural thing for me.
So you talked about these social supports and coaches being influences and
Mhm.
some teammates taking under their wing. Who else were teammates that inspired you, that helped you and really pushed you to be your best?
Cam, um, me and Cam Newton played together for a year at Blinn, and that was probably one of the best things that ever happened. So again, like I said, like I was supposed to be the starting quarterback the following year after my freshman year. I'm back home actually working out. I get a call from a guy from the newspaper that I've been knowing for a while in Brenham. And he's like, what do you think about the new quarterback that's coming? And he's like, no. He's like, well, Coach Fred hadn't told you yet. And I'm thinking like me and my head coach, my position coach, we were pretty cool. So I'm like, no, nobody's told me anything yet. He was like, well, look, let's keep this between me. You know me, you've known each other for a while. I'm like, sure. So first thing I do, we get off the phone, I jump on YouTube, I Google. First clip that pops up is Cam. Florida was playing against Tennessee Volunteers. Sits a young plow over a guy. I'm like, this dude ain't no quarterback. They're like, just like a defensive end. So he ended up coming, fast forward. I meet him in our student center, and upstairs we have a nice little game room. And the first thing we do, we meet. I'm pretty good at ping pong, so he's like, "You want to play ping pong?" So we, off the bat, just first meeting, me and him playing ping pong for probably an hour. After that, like, look, let's play 2-on-2 with some other guys playing. So we play 2-on-2. We literally stay in the student center for probably 2.5, 3 hours just playing ping pong. And like from then on, it was like we would compete in everything. If it was playing cards, if it was lifting weights, we would go throw together. Um, we used to do a thing after practice or workouts to where me and him would throw to each other. We go the length of the field, 100 yards. Quarterback calls out a route, you got to run it. If you drop the ball, you got to start all the way over. But wherever you catch the ball is where you start the next rep from. And we would just do that probably 2, 3 times, get our cardio in, and then take it in. But again, I think him being at Florida and coming to Blinn, like already having the work ethic, seeing how things go, that just really inspired me and pushed me.
And talk to me about, like, the highest high. Now, it could be winning the national championship, but it could be another game. Is there a game that stands out in your career?
I would have to say that U of H game. Um, I think that's still maybe top 5 greatest upsets in college football history. We went into that game like we had a different mindset going into that year, just because we had a great spring, we had a great fall camp, but we went into that game, I think 30-point underdog. It was something double digit underdog, and just pregame, like, it just felt different, like, the whole atmosphere and everything, it felt different, but we ended up pulling that game out, and that's probably one of the biggest moments, like, when I go back to San Marcos, people still talk about that game. So, for me, that's probably the biggest one.
And did you do anything different in preparation? Did it feel different? Like, did you everyone kinda knows if they've experienced flow state, right? Sometimes you experience it even before, you're, like, so confident, you're like and calm, like, you're like, "I got this."
Mhm.
Had you prepped for that, gotten in that state? Like
I think it may have, because my junior year at Texas State, like, I hadn't played quarterback, look, fully, just because I redshirted my first year, Cam came, and then we had another quarterback came, excuse me, come. So, I, um I was starting at receiver. Our coach asked, "Do you wanna compete?" And I was like, "Well, no, I've been starting at receiver, let's just stick with that." So, my junior year was actually my first time getting back to fully playing quarterback, so that was just kinda getting my feet wet and getting back into, that mode, but my senior year, like, I was back. I felt like I was myself, and then, again, like, that, spring we had and in the fall camp, like, I just felt different. I felt like myself again, so I do feel like it had a lot to do with just the preparation of how I took into it.
and you mentioned, like, mentally you guys were, like, ready. Like, how much in your time at Flynn, at Texas State, and we can get into Europe too, but was the mental game and mental health a part of the conversation?
I think it was big. Um, just the preparation, because I feel like the game slowed down so much for me, and like I just had a weight lifted off of me my senior year, just because my junior year was always me and another guy kind of competing. Like, if I make a mistake, oh, he's coming in. If he made a mistake, it's me. Just going back and forth. So that, for me, it kind of beat me up mentally, just because it's like, dang, I can't make a mistake. Like, any little mistake I make, like, oh, here comes the other guy. But going into my senior year, it was like I was so crisp and just getting stuff done. It was like, all right, like, this is my team. And I told my coach one practice, he was like, why don't you ever just take over? I was like, how can I take over when I gotta look over my shoulder every time? And he was like, well, look, let's not do that no more. This is your team then. I was like, well, if you say it, mean it. Like, don't tell me that. And then it's still the same thing. So we had that conversation. He was like, no, he was like, this is your team. So from that point on, it was kind of like, okay, let's do it.
Had you experienced, like, self-doubt or low confidence during the first 2 to 3 years of your career?
When I first got to Blend, yes, because I was kind of unsure. And then always being a guy, and then now having to take the back seat to somebody else, I was like, dang, is football really for me? Like, can't play baseball, but it's football for me. So a lot of self-doubt was there, and then my junior year at Texas State, like, Coach Fran and Coach Schultz, like, anybody that knows them, like, when they were coaching, like, they coach hard. Like, they talk to you, they want the best out of you, but at the same time, it's kinda like, all right, like, and, me and Coach Short had some talk about kinda how he talks and things like that. Because when I came from JUCO, I was a little bit older now, so I'm like, "Hey, like, I'm a man." Like, at the same time, like, let's talk to each other like men, and go from there. But just kinda same thing, some of the ways that they talked, and then also not knowing how things were gonna go, like, it was some self-doubt there. But, um, for me, I'm super confident, but at times when it's kinda like, again, I'm kinda peeking over your shoulder to kinda see things, like, that kinda made me a little self-doubt there.
Yeah, what did you do during that time to help you stay locked in, to believe in yourself?
So, for me with that, it was getting back in the film room, and Cam probably got sick of me calling him. Like, I would call him, like, every other day, but, like, "Dude, like, they got me back at quarterback. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Like, I'm grinding, but I'm not really being rewarded for the things that I'm doing." And he was like, "Look," he was like, "Go find you one dude on that team that's gonna grind with you, like, be there. If you say, yeah, you're on the way to go pick them up to go run routes, like, have that one person." So I had one receiver that anytime I reached out to him, boom, he was ready to go. But if he didn't come with me, I would literally take all 20 balls that we had in the equipment room and go throw it to a trash can or just throw at our field goal post. So I think that helped me get over the self-doubt because it's like, okay, I'm gonna be ready. But now my teammates are starting to see, oh, Shaun's grinding by himself if nobody else wants to do it. So now some of them are kind of following suit. Now it turns from one receiver to 5 receivers to 10 receivers, even some of the redshirt guys out there catching with me. So I think that was a big part too.
The hardest transition is when you're used to being the guy
Mhm.
and now you're not the guy. And you logically know, like, that's the plan. But that competitor in you, it's hard to turn it down because, like, you're used to being the guy and you wanna
Mhm.
play, and now you have to watch, and I think, like, teaching people of how can you still be competitive? How
Right.
can you still show up? And it sounds like you were doing that, right? Weight room, ping pong challenges, things like that. But it takes a toll.
Yeah.
It definitely takes a toll. Was there talks in the locker room, in the coaching dynamic, in the training rooms around mental health or mental performance work?
There was never really talks like that. Sad to say, back when I was playing, mental, that whole thing was
Mhm.
looked upon as being weak. So I think a lot of people tried to cover that up and they had to battle a lot of things internally by themselves just because it was looked at as, oh, you're weak if you battle something
Right.
mentally, or if you say, oh, I'm dealing with this. Um, so there was never really talks about anything like that. I think for me, my escape from that was talking to people. Like I pick up the phone, call my mom, like just we'll sit on the phone and talk for like 45 minutes to an hour just to kind of vent and just get things out. But that was just kind of my scapegoat of just picking up the phone and kind of talking it out with people.
And now we can see that the shift is happening, right? How do we encourage more athletes to actually be vulnerable, be honest, and actually reach out and get help?
Mhm. So in think this may answer the question, but like just for me, when our with our 7-on-7 program, we try to have different people come in and talk to the guys to where they understand like it's not weak. So if a professional athlete comes in and they're talking about, oh well, I do this for mental health, or this is kind of what I do, or have someone like yourself come in and talk to them to where they see it. Like if somebody like myself or my partner Bernard Blake puts someone in front to kind of show them and advocate for like mental health is not weak. It's something that we have, but we have a certain way that we need to deal with it. I think that kind of helps them open up to the fact of it's needed to do it.
Yeah. And to your point, like, we all have mental health, right? It's just like the physical health part. And this is part of why we do the podcast is like the story shares what you experience. Like, so much isolation and internalization can exist when we don't openly talk about it. You've experienced it. You were fortunate enough, like, you like to talk and you call people and people answer the phone, which is great. But I'm still sure there's nights where that still wasn't enough.
Yeah. No, it definitely was. And one big part for me, so my senior year, like I mentioned, I had a really good year. And there were a few NFL scouts that started coming to practice. And I kind of thought like there's always a vision and a goal to get to the NFL. So I'm like, oh, this coach is coming through and coaches asking, like pointing, like, hey, da, 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 can he do this? Can he do that? And so after our season, I was training for our pro day in the best shape of my life. I'm running a 4.5. My vertical is like a 37. I'm hitting 225, like 15 to 16 times, like best shape of my life. Literally a week before my pro day, I'm driving to training. I fall asleep driving, wake up, boom, head on with 18 wheeler.
Oh,
And at that moment, like I just broke down. Like I call my mom, like I'm crying, like I'm just boom. And the first thing, like she just hears me crying. She's like, "What's going on?" And I'm like, "Well, I just hit an 18 wheeler," and she's thinking the worst instantly. And my family stays like 3 hours away from San Marcos, but they instantly got in the car. Like everybody got together, and drove down. And at that point, like I just saw everything that I worked for, my whole life just go down. And for probably like 8, 9 years, I didn't watch the NFL draft. I couldn't do it. And after the draft, like I had a few teams, I was like, oh, we'll give you a call a few days after. Nothing. And I just kind of went into a hole. Like I went to the square probably 5 days a week, just drinking, trying to drink everything away. Um, but I battled with something like I couldn't get over that at that time, but I don't even remember what got me over that. I know I got into like my Bible heavy, started reading the Bible and trying to get closer with God. But at that point in time, like it was nothing that would bring me
Mhm.
out of that. That was tough.
And you stayed on campus. So for those who don't know, the Square is, the place in Texas State. It's like, everyone has their, like, 6th Street, Main Street,
Mhm.
whatever it is. So your dreams are lost. You now go into this dark space and drink, and people might think you're just living it up, right?
Yeah.
Senior year, doing your thing, but you were, like,
Yeah.
depressed, isolated, lost.
Mhm.
How long was that period for you? Was it just the spring, summer? Was it longer?
So that was probably from April to probably maybe end of June. I ended up getting a call from a few teams in NFL Europe to get me to come out there. So at the time, I was like, no, I don't even want to play football no more. Like, I suck. Like, I just don't have it no more. But talked to a few of my mentors, and they was like, dude, like, you got to come out of this. But it was times like I'll open up blinds. It would be 1 in the afternoon. I'm just in my room, like I'm like, all right, dude, like you got to get yourself together. And
Mhm.
again, for me, like always being confident, always having everything I wanted, like just battling with that, it was tough. But finally got myself together, and I was like, you know what, like I'm gonna give it another run. I'm gonna see what we can do. So I ended up going out to Germany, and it was kind of cool because I didn't have to stay the whole 6 months the first time going, so I got to kind of see how it was gonna be. Only had to go for 3 months, so went out there, kind of finished off the season with them. They were already in the playoffs. Um, I think we had to win 2 games to go to the playoff. Well, we had to win 2 games to go in the playoffs, but we ended up winning. That was the first championship we won, and then that's kind of how my whole overseas kick started going.
Now, did you stay with Germany the whole time that you played, or did you change different teams in Europe?
So I started off in Germany, then I went to France, and then from France I went to Serbia.
Wow. So talk to me about these cultural experiences, right? Like first we have this junior college to then, Division 1
Mhm,
school, right? Different experience, but
mhm,
still a little bit easier, right? Same state, not
mhm.
that far apart. But now you're going to like different country,
Uh-huh.
different languages. Like what is football like over in Europe?
So it was definitely another culture shock. Like my first game playing in Germany, we get to halftime, like our coach is talking. I don't know if anybody ever seen Loving Basketball, but when she
Mhm.
turned, it was like, what did he just say? Like that's how it was. Like I'm looking at my team like, what did coach just say? I look, we got another teammate smoking a cigarette. I'm like,
In the team meeting.
in the team, like dude just over in the corner just hitting a cigarette. And I'm like, all right, well, everybody's kind of got their way of things, but it was actually dope. Like I had a bunch of dope teammates in Germany. France was definitely a culture shock. Like there were so many people out there where that was kind of rude. Like Germany and Serbia, like the people are great. Like I still keep in contact with a lot of my teammates, but France, like just the language barrier, trying to understand that, people not wanting to tell you, oh, you take a left here, you go this way.
Was the competition like the same level? Did you feel it was a tear down? Like what was it like in that competitive space?
It was a decent drop off. There were still some teams that are pretty good, but kind of how the CFL is, you can only have a certain amount of Americans on the team. Um, I think Germany, you can only have 4 on a team, 2 can be on the field at the same time. France is a little different. I think it was 6 on a team and 4 could be on the field at the same time. And then Serbia, you can have 4 on the team, 3 on the field at the same time. So it was a little different, but um, there was definitely some guys that could play. And then out there, their professional starts at like 18. So some kids would be like 18, 19 playing with grown men.
Yeah, similar to like a soccer academy or
Mhm.
baseball, right? So break it down to when you decided your career was done, you were done playing, and then you were gonna come back and transition in your career.
So a CFL team got a hold of my highlights from NFL Europe and was like, hey, we have one more tryout that's going to be in I forgot where it was at. Alabama. So I'm like, dang, Alabama. I look at flights. Flights are like $600. I'm like, well, that ain't happening. So I end up telling one of my homeboys, like, hey, like, I'm chasing this dream. You want to ride with me or what? Oh, I'm down. So I hop in the car, 12-hour drive. We knock it out. We get there, and it's me and one other quarterback. But I'm the type of person, like, I like to be laid back and kinda see everything before I move and do anything. So I'm just kinda back. I'm seeing if there's any other quarterbacks there doing whatever. So all the receivers are kinda migrating to this other quarterback just because at the time he's the only one there. So they're trying to get on his good side and do all this. So I finally get up, I start throwing the football, and everybody, "Who's this guy?" So they start coming over there. It's like, "What position you play?" "My quarterback." So they come over there and everybody's doing this, doing that. We're talking. We start the tryout. I kill it, same thing. All my numbers are good. I think I might have threw one incomplete pass the whole trial. So I'm talking to the GM and the head coach, and they're like, "Dude, like, we love you. We want to get you down. We have our draft coming up." They kind of explain the whole thing about the Canadian players being on the team versus the Americans and the limits and all that stuff. So they actually had a quarterback that was like 39 at the time, and that was supposed to retire, and that was going to be when I slotted. He ended up returning for another year, so I never got the call. So again, I was just like, all right, I'm done with ball. Like, always knew that I wanted to be a coach or some type of sports performance trainer. So I'm like, well, look, like, I know what I want to do. Like, let's just jump into it. And the guy that trained me for pro day, he reached out. He's like, hey man, like, I'm finna get in coaching now. The director of sports operations position is going to be open at the facility if you want to take it. Sure. All right.
Right.
Yeah, I'm 23, 24, and I jump into a job like that for my first job. I'm like, of course. So I jump into that. I started doing that, and I had a few teams reach out again about playing. I was like, no, I'm done. Like, I'll find something to do in my free time, but to go back and do that again, I'm good.
Was it you were tired of this, like, cat mouse game, or were you physically and mentally and emotionally just done with the game?
Emotionally, I was done. Like, I was just over it. Like, I couldn't keep doing it. Like you said, like the cat and mouse game to constantly like be pulled here, be pulled there, and like in knowing that my dream of the NFL was just kind of getting farther. I was content with the fact of knowing, like, well, you're getting older. Like, it's time. Like, it's getting harder to get to and further to reach. So I was fine with it. I felt like I had a great career. Would have loved to get to the NFL, but for me, the experience of going overseas, like, I think in 3 years, I got like 50, 60 stamps on my passport. So that was awesome for me, like, to have that experience. Like, most people from my city, they've never been outside of the city, or the state. So for me to see places like Croatia, Turkey, all those different places, like, that was good for me.
Yeah, that's amazing. Oftentimes when my athletes are, like, retiring out of sport, right, there's this weird transition, and while you were set up for a job,
Mhm.
did you experience a tough transition in the professional world, or was it a little bit easier because you had a soft landing with this career in place?
Um, it was pretty much a soft landing. And then I always try to make connections wherever I go. Like, I try to shake hands and meet people. That's one of my things. Like, um, I just used a caption on one of my pictures recently. Like, you move with grace and respect, it'll take you places money can't. And for me, it's just always doing right by people and just being there for people. And I think that comes a long way with things. So just being connected with people over the years, and I think even with my trainer reaching out, like, it was something I was doing every time I come in to talk to him or that he saw, for him to reach out to me and ask for me to take over that spot.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it goes back to that relationship piece we talked about, right? Now, did you stop working out completely? Did you keep your routines? Like, it's always different with my athletes retiring. What was your transition to the physical aspect of stuff?
In the back of my head, I was still like, all right, now if an NFL team happens to call, like, I'm gonna go do it. So being working at a facility, I was like, well, you're still here, like, still work out. Cause we had a gap during the day of like 3, 4 hours to where nobody would come in. So that would be my time to like hop on the treadmill or get a workout in. So I was still doing it, but as I got older and older, I was like, well, now it's just to work out just to stay fit.
And then as you transition into your own kind of process of this is my future now, right? You
Mhm.
found your passion through kind of running these camps stuff. Talk to me about what hit you that made you know like you wanted to start tier one quarterback and that be your main focus.
Um, I had one of our boosters from Texas State reach out. Um, he was like, "Hey, I saw you are back in Austin and you've been training. Are you interested in training my son?" I was like, "Sure, like, let's give it a whack. Let's try it out." So started working with him, and it was fun. Like it didn't feel like work. Like even now when I go to my training sessions, it never feels like work. Like I'm like, boom, I'm having fun. I still get to throw the ball and be active. But training his son, that turned into word of mouth. Like 2, 3 more people did it. Somebody would see us at the field training. Hey, can I get your information? Like, I mean, this is pretty easy. So within the span of probably 6 months, one client turned into maybe like 10 or 12. And I was like, as I kind of started diving more into it, like I would be at the house writing workouts. Oh, this will be good for me. This will be fun. And at that point, I'm like, I'm actually pretty good at doing this. Like, I'm like just even doing X's and O's and being able to teach and then show the guys, I'm like, this may be something I really want to pursue and do.
And then was there mentorship? Because I mean, naturally good at playing the game, you're good at seeing the game, you're watching a film, but now you have to run this business. How do you transition to this business mind and running a business?
Um, Reading books, talking to people, picking people's brains. One of my best friends is very business savvy, so just kind of picking his brain and learning. We actually ended up partnering just so he can help with certain things in the whole um, conversation piece. And because at first I wasn't really a big talker, so he's like, "Dude, you gotta like talk." Cause I'll sit here and just listen to everybody talk and kind of kick back and observe everything. And when I feel like it's time to talk, then I'll kind of jump in. But he's like, "No, like you gotta kick the doors in, like talk, do this, do that." So um, that's been good too.
Yeah. What are the goals you have for the impact you want with tier one quarterback?
For me, I just want every quarterback to be the best that they can be. Build confidence just because as a quarterback, if you don't have confidence, you don't have anything. So that's kind of the first thing that I try to build within them. Like, yes, the being able to throw and move and all that is good, but at the same time, if a bad play happens and you shut down, we're no good. So the confidence piece of it, one of my favorite quotes that I've been using for so long is bet on yourself. So if you see any of my kids, they're probably either putting that hashtag in their post or saying it or wearing some merch of it, but that's been like huge.
Now, it's interesting, right? Because looking and listening to your story, while you wanted to be playing and you were
Mhm,
competitive, we know that there was that self-doubt, there was
mhm,
constantly looking over your shoulder until someone told you, "You're the guy, go be
mhm,
the guy," right? Basically bet
mhm.
on yourself, right? Um, how do you teach confidence? This is one of the questions we have all the time in sports psychology, right? Is confidence a skill? Is it something that can be taught? Is it a combination of things? Like, how do you teach it?
I think it comes with, especially for a quarterback, it comes with repetitions. I always laugh with my guys. I'm like, when you have doubt, like, and now it's weird because now like I've seen so much, I've done so much. It's like I've gotten it. Like it's so I'm like I just laugh with them and I'm like, just watch me. Whatever you don't know what to do, and I just like watch. So in times if they can't get a throw or do something, like I'll do it and then hey, well, coach can still do it. Like, what that look easy. I'm like, it's easy because it is. Like if you just do it and you put the reps into it, like it just naturally starts to happen. But um, I think the constant reps and repetition that just helps build and build.
Mm. And I love that. I think preparation, like, leads to consistency,
Mhm.
and then we know that leads to success. So there's also a question I love to have. Does success breed success, or does struggle and fighting and chasing after it lead to more success?
I think the struggle, like you have to embrace the struggle. Um, I have a tattoo design at the house that I've been waiting to get, but it says struggle before success. Like you have to go through whatever it is before you get to the top. You have some people that don't have to go through much, but it's very slim that you see that. But everybody I know, they've had some type of struggle before they got to that point of where they wanted to be.
I love that. And currently in your, like, day to day, what is the go-to to help you stay mentally sharp, working on your mental health,
Mhm.
and helping you optimize your best self as a coach and a leader?
I think a big thing now, my daughter's about to be 3, so just getting up now and, like, seeing her, like, just her smile on her face, like, that's all the motivation in the world. But I have a ton of words of affirmation, excuse me. And then every morning before I get up, I say a quick prayer and then bet on yourself. Like, that's kinda my thing to get me going, or if it's something I don't even wanna do, like, it's reminding myself, like, "You don't have to do this, you get to do this."
Right.
So just to constant reminders because the mind is a powerful thing. Like if I have self-doubt or if I'm like, I gotta do this, like it's a big chance that I'm gonna do a horrible job at it or it's gonna be kind of here instead of like, all right, I get to do this. Like, let's get to it. Let's knock it out. And that's one thing I try to tell my kids. It's like, if you doubt yourself before you make this pass or before this play starts, more times than none, it's not going to be a good play. So before you get to the line, take a deep breath, say whatever you have to say to yourself or whatever it is, and then clap your hands. But again, the mind is powerful. Like, it does what you give it.
And those little routines, like, I don't think our athletes realize, like, when we're watching the game, we don't understand there's a lot that goes into that mental preparation.
Mhm.
There's a lot more time than people realize. Like, when I say, like, feel the field, right? Or be
Mhm.
where your feet are. Like, when you're crossing that line, you're going in and you're at the line of scrimmage, like, you have time to just take a breath. You have time, to just, like, pause and look at something
Right.
before you go. I
Mhm.
mean, those that are really good at it, the game actually feels slow.
Mhm.
But when we're watching it, we don't understand all that's going into it, and people are saying stuff and thinking through, and I love that little bit of you have to be confident before you actually start that play. Before you even initiate it, you
Mhm.
have to know that you're gonna complete this.
Yep.
I mean, that's a huge little nugget for sure. So talking about that, I love to ask all my guests, like, if there was a mental cheat code that either you had as an athlete or what you really teach your athletes now, what is the mental cheat code that you know is a game changer for them?
I think it's just that word of affirmation, like have something that takes you into that zone and takes you to that mode. And I gave an example of another guy, like Quandre Diggs is my cousin. Like we train together in the off season, and whenever just we work out together. Like I'll jump in and do it with him, but we compete. And whenever he's doing something, like we get to a point to where it's just him working out, he says to himself, "Hey, you're that guy. Never forget you're that guy." So somebody that's at that high of a level doing it, still doing it, and they give themselves like, boom, that starter. Like, hey, I'm that guy. I've always been that guy. And just to get going, I think it's good to just have a word of affirmation or something that gets you going, like something that makes you lock in. So if you're lost and you're kind of like, man, I don't know what to do. Boom, it could be whatever you say, but it takes you back to that space.
I love it. I love it. All right, and last thing, because I'm curious, like, out of all the athletes that you've coached, right? Has there been one, that has impacted you the most? And maybe we don't name the names, right? Because we don't
Mhm.
want to get the name of your athletes jealous, but like, what was it about an athlete that their story or them as a person has made such a mark on you?
Well, yeah, I can't name one because this been a lot of them, but um, man, just seeing some of the guys like maybe living with the grandma or grandpa, but still living life as if he's got everything he ever needs in the world. Um, that's probably it for me. Like you see so many kids that just get caught up in like the NIL money or I want to do this, I want to do that, I want the cars, I want this. It's like I just want to play and provide for my family. So I've seen so many kids that have been like that. It's like I want to change my family's perspective on life. I want to change how they're living, how they see things and do things. So I think for me, just seeing those type of athletes that remember it's a privilege to get to play this game. Um, I think that's probably the biggest thing for me.
Yeah, I love that because we see sport and especially the business of sport happening from professional to collegiate business. We know it's going to transition to the young youth sports soon. Um, to know that those that are maybe the most successful are those with humility and grace. Like, it definitely feels like that's true. And if we could create a theme,
Yep.
we could look at a lot of those that their why is a little bit different than everyone else's. Any last thing you want to share with us? Like, I appreciate it. I think your stories have been so great to hear everything you've done. But anything last message you want to share?
Um, no, just if you're out there and you struggle with mental health, like bet on yourself, find something to take you to that mode, take you to that zone.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Really, thank you.